Huge work mistake. Forgot an airline crew in a McDonald's in Portugal for 5 days. What's your biggest work related mistake? Throwaway. For obvious reasons. I was working on one of those TV shows where you do stupid things in public and film people's reactions. In the skit we were doing, a man would be jogging with a stroller containing a lifelike baby doll, and I was going to hit him with a car. The jogger was wearing bright green. They dress funny on these shows so that you don't mix up the cast with pedestrians. So I'm cruising up to the stop sign in a beat up old Ford. My adrenaline is really pumping. This was my first time actually being involved in a skit. I see the bright green jumpsuit, and I gun it. I hit the wrong guy. It was just some dude jogging with his kid. I realized what happened when the guy I hit didn't jump onto the hood the way you're supposed to in these stunts. I honestly don't remember anything about the incident after that. I was in shock. The dad had a few broken bones. The baby was fine. Needless to say, there was a huge settlement paid out. I'm currently pursuing an unrelated career. Accidentally uploaded the email templates to the wrong website. The email template I uploaded was from an organic farm company with a message like, if we don't get back to you soon, we're probably knee deep in mud. The company I uploaded it to? Yup, funeral directors. Killed all power to a stage in a venue with 1,200 people raving hard. Longest 30 seconds ever while I switched the broken cable out. My dad always tells of a story when he, an electrician, plugged in some wires backwards and blew up a $10,000 piece of equipment. His boss was really cool though and told him, just consider this a $10,000 investment in your education. I had a project to refurbish the sump in a hydrochloric acid containment structure in a refinery. Basically, the HCl tank had a wall around it so that if the tank leaked, the HCl would be contained. Inside the wall was a sump full of water, used to scrub out the fumes when the tank was filled. Never mind. This sump was full of very acidic water, and even after pumping it out and flushing it several times, the pH was 0. Yes, 0. Well, we couldn't use the special epoxy to repair the cracked concrete until the pH was like 2 or something. So I suggested that we put some Neo into the next flush to try to bring the pH up enough. The manager in charge said, good idea. Just fill it with straight caustic, the industry term for Neo. That wasn't my intention, but I went along. And when we came back the next day, the sump was gone. The Neo had just eaten the HCl soaked concrete in a frenzy of reactive chemistry. Now, for those of you who remember your high school chemistry, HCl plus Neo, more than NaCl plus H2O. For those who don't, I had made a puddle of salt water where they had been acid soaked ground before. Pretty innocuous, but that's not how the EPA sees things. It was a spill to ground of more than 1 barrel of Neo and thus a reportable incident. Oh, and the sump was dissolved. My boss was very cool about it and we built a new sump and put it in the big hole I had created. And excellent Alice. Started a business with my in-laws. I accidentally knocked over 2 aisles filled with wine glasses. Lucky for me, everyone was too busy freaking the duck out. There was apparently a customer nearby who also got a few cuts on his legs that they didn't notice me slowly slipping away and reappearing a few seconds later to ask what happened. No one ever suspected it was me, but I still felt horrible because it was over a few $1,000s worth of stuff that I broke. Which may not sound like much, but when you're 15 years old working on $11 HR, 5 hours a week. Military guy here, fired artillery rounds 14 kilometers off target in Afghanistan. No one was injured and the issue was more systemic than my fault, so no one got in trouble after it was all said and done. The rounds were elimination, so the chance for injury was pretty minimal. The scary part is that no one except me noticed the mistake. Accidentally sent out the salaries of every one of our executives and the owner to about 100 people in the company. The TLDR is that I requested info from HR, just a list of eligible employees for something, and what they sent had the default sheet 1/sheet 2/sheet 3 tabs at the bottom of the workbook. Sheet 1 was the list I had requested. Sheet 2 was for some reason executive compensation. It sucked. I once forgot to buy UACube 48,000 worth of Microsoft licenses for a council. They were not pleased when they found out. I used to be a product merchandiser for Coca-Cola a few years ago. Basically what I did was go to grocery stores, meet the driver dropping the delivery and stock the shelves as fast as possible and get to the next store. Repeat. My second day on the job I was stocking 2L bottles at this mega grocery store, running a bit behind because the order came in late so I was moving fast. Dropped a bottle of Sprite on the floor, and it hit cap down. That little bastard shot up in the air and cleared 4 aisles. Luckily it didn't hit anyone. On my last day of working for Coke same thing happened. Except this time it went flying straight for the cash and nearly hit some lady in the head. As I headed to the back room to get a mop, every employee was lined up applauding. One of them offered to clean it up as it was the funniest thing he'd seen working at the store, and that was the last bottle I stocked working for Coca-Cola. I left a huge legal folder for a multi-billion, with a B, lawsuit on the subway. Some homeless guy finds it, calls the opposing attorney and ransoms the damn thing. Luckily there was nothing in the file that wasn't secret or not public record. Needless to say I was fired, Okay, I've come out of the depths of lurkerdom to post this. Here goes. I used to work for a TV company that makes a lot of high profile shows, including one of the most popular shows on British TV, which is also broadcast around the world. Our client had gone out on location and shot all their footage for an episode of this show and brought it back to my work, only for me to then lose their tapes. The show goes out on a Wednesday night, and it got to the Sunday beforehand and we still couldn't locate 5 of their tapes of footage, because I had put them somewhere, and not in the location I logged them into on our system. Everybody chipped in to help look for these tapes, staying behind and pulling 16-hour shifts to search for them. But when push came to shove, we couldn't find them and my company had to pay for the client to reshoot their footage. Not the end of the world, right? Wrong. It turns out that the footage on the tapes I had misplaced had been shot from a goddamn helicopter. So my company had to fork out $18,000 for the camera rentals, the crew and the hire for a damn chopper. And then real kicker is that as soon as they had shot it again, the original tapes turned up. FML. TL. DR. I messed up bad and cost my company $18,000. It went a little something like this. I work a small cinema in small town where everyone knows everyone, and I put my hand up to work the midnight release of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Everything was going well. Cinemas were working fine. The food was plentiful and everyone was having a wonderful time. Until I remembered I never actually had the hard drive. Our cinema is DCI. For Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. TL. DR. Refund all the things. I posted this once before, but I was in the middle of a remote assistance session with a user who was having trouble with his Outlook. I resolved his issue and proceeded to send a test email to myself along the lines of test this is a test. I was doing a million other things at once so I wasn't paying attention to the screen or keyboard. And when I looked at the screen, my heart sank. Twat this is a twat. Luckily the user I was on the phone with was a good sport and thought it was hilarious. I was pretty mortified. I used to work on a ship. I wasn't particularly high up in the rankings, but I'd like to think I served an important function. I was kind of like the handyman, going around fixing various things that were broken, such as vending machines for the rest of the crew. Despite me failing a few exams, the captain gave me the opportunity to make a fix to an important engine part. I don't know what I did wrong, but I didn't seal the plate properly, and the whole thing unexpectedly blew. It happened literally as I was explaining the problems I had with it to the captain. It actually unleashed a huge radiation leak that killed most of the crew. It was an extremely hot day and I was playing for a festival crowd of thousands. These festival tents warm up quite fast and I dehydrated like crazy under these hot lamps. It wasn't the ordinary festival, when suddenly I decided to grab a microphone and tell the crowd I was thirsty. I've never seen this much liquid, mostly beer, flying through the air towards me. When I finished the set and one of the stagehands lifted up one of the CDJs, there was about 3 liters of beer running out of it. Not a biggie in the grand scheme of things, but one that stands out in my memory. Nonetheless, it was my first day flying solo as a manager at Burger King. Training manager, not shadowing. It was a Sunday morning. A lady had called in a moderately sized order to pick up. I made sure we had it ready to go and thought all was well. It had been about 15 minutes past the time she was expected to arrive to pick up the order. Soon it was 30 minutes and the 3 or 4 bags containing the order were still sitting on the heat chute. By this time breakfast had closed at 11 AM. About another 10 to 15 minutes later I figured she probably wasn't going to come in. So I threw it out. As luck would have it, she showed up just after the food she had ordered went into the trash. When she asked for her order I had to politely tell her that since her order had been sitting on the heat chute long past the time she was due to pick it up that I had thrown it out. She gave me the iciest stare anyone had ever given me. She didn't say a word and then she walked back out. I can't say it was necessarily entirely my fault since the food was long past its shelf life as she had come in so much later than when she was expected. Since I was the only manager on duty and it was my first day alone I wasn't sure what the protocol was for holding late call-in orders. Call-in orders were not common, so I had to just make a judgment call. I lost my father's company $3 million in assets due to a typo as an 18-year-old intern. I worked as a cameraman in high school. One night I was working alone at our town hall filming a committee meeting and my boss gave me the keys. I was told to break down and lock up after the shoot. I forgot to lock the town hall. My ducking town hall was wide open for a whole weekend. I realized this after I returned the keys. So for the whole weekend I was freaking out, thinking everything would be stolen and they would trace this mistake back to me. Nothing was stolen and everything was fine. I've never actually told anyone this before. I worked in a warehouse once unloading trucks of mostly food and sometimes cigarettes. I was unloading a few pallets of cigarettes and accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake. I reamed the boxes. I thought I was fired for sure as reaming a boxes of cigarettes costs quite a bit. $50 a carton / 30 cartons a box. Turned out I missed the Marlboros and hit some mini cigars that were packed on top. Things are like $5 a carton. Boss was happy he didn't have to fire me for it so it worked out. Another time I ran the thing into a shelf, which knocked it over and then knocked over the one next to it like dominoes. I didn't have a driver's license at the time so I'm not really sure why they kept having me drive that forklift. Now I'm behind a computer screen away from heavy machinery. I'm sure everyone is safer for it. I used to work on a website that sold very seasonal products. The Friday evening before Halloween, one of the busiest trading times for the site, I was checking things were all okay over SSH. Everything seemed fine so I decided to leave my computer. Typed sudo halt into my terminal without thinking and went and got dinner. Turned out I was still logged into the server and had turned that off instead of my machine. The site was down all weekend, missing out of thousands of pounds of trading. I no longer work on that site. TL. Doctor, I remotely turned off a web server and got fired. Used a equals rather than equals in a bulk email sent to clients' business partners. First recipient got 900 emails. Second 899. Third 898. So on and so forth. I configured a server, moved it on site at a client, installed and configured apps, all without realizing it was RAID 0 instead of RAID 5. Mission critical data on this box. 1 year later while on site for a different reason my boss realized what I did. I spent the night there backing up, recreating the array, and restoring. This isn't too bad, but I messed up the logos that were supposed to go on the bottom of a bunch of signs I'd made. I put our organization's logo on the sign, but not the logo of another org working on the project with us. So the solution we figured out was for me to just slice the bottoms off of every sign. No logos. Nobody feels slighted. I still remember the sinking feeling of realizing I was going to be stuck at work till midnight, cutting off the bottoms of 600 signs with a rusty paper cutter, until I realized I could call the printer back and ask him to take the signs back and cut them off himself. He saved my ass. I sent him chocolate. Let's hold a moment of silence for all the patients doctors have accidentally killed. Not my mistake, but I think our CEO wins this thread. I used to work for a telecom company and our CEO went to a site to look at our new fiber optic shelter. While going around the shelter he accidentally stepped on fiber that was transmitting more than quarter of the data of our country. All our country had outbound connection problem for 18 hours. It affected more than 10 million people. I once worked for a music PR company. My first job was to send a promotional email out to about 1,000 journalists. I forgot to BCC every and instead just CC'd them. 90% of the mailing list unsubscribed. As you can imagine, that 1,000 journos was the PR company's bread and butter. Oh god, here goes. Working at McDonald's 3 years ago. Little kid spills Coke on the floor. I happily wander over to clean it up. Never was bitter about my job. It's my job. It pays and I chose it, with a mop. Mop that it up lightning fast with a smile and everybody is happy. Go behind the counter and retrieve the slippery when wet sign to place over the newly cleaned area. And when I get there, distracted by something, I slip. My foot slips out like a javelin and kicks a baby's high chair. The baby's head whiplashes against his table so hard both of his shoes fall right off. I just stared in horror at the family. I place the sign down like an idiot and run back behind the kitchen for my dear life. Then I proceeded to crack up in the most maniacal nervous laughter accented with breaths of horror. What had I done? You win. OP. The worst I have is that I once said dick instead of disc while speaking with a customer. Wiped a router cutting internet access for 30k people for 5 hours. Probably won't be seen by now, but when I was an MSN tier 2 infrastructure engineer, I deleted all the MX records for the hotmail.com domain, effectively cutting off inbound mail for all of Hotmail. It was down for about 5 hours. I was officiating a soccer game of 15-year-old boys. The team's respective colors were red and white. There was one African American boy on the red team. As the game progressed, it got more dangerous and out of hand. At halftime, I informed both benches that I would be calling the game tight, and that the next flagrant foul would not go unpunished. 30 seconds into the second half, the African American boy had a hard foul. I blew my whistle very aggressively and yelled, "Take a rest, black." After realizing what I had said, I immediately tried to correct myself. I stumbled over every word. The damage was already done. One player on the other team said to me, "Not cool, dude." I work for a lighting manufacturing company. We sold a huge amount of light fixtures to UPS that they were using in their warehouse facilities. Imagine a huge order with skids and skids of shrink wrapped fixtures. Everything was going great. Even was asked to step up the delivery date to meet a deadline. Told them sure, no problem. Fixtures make it to the job site, except they arrive in FedEx trucks. I did not live that one down for a long time. I broke a champagne flute at a wedding once. It was one of the bride and groom's matched set. I was picking up cake plates and saw the glass on the edge of the table. Told myself be really careful, that's at a bad spot, and then proceeded to tap it just enough to knock it off the table to the ground. Shattered. The glasses were crystal and a family heirloom passed down through their Jewish family from before the Holocaust. I have never felt more guilty or terrible in my life. I still think about it sometimes and want to curl up in a ball and die. TL. Doctor, there's nothing quite so anticlimactic as being destroyed by a clumsy waiter after surviving the Holocaust. I worked payroll for a contractor for a railroad company and I was in charge of making sure all of the companies got paid. I did pretty well and liked the job, but one of the companies who had the biggest contract with us, millions, had an invoice that was just one page while all the other contracts were pages upon pages of figures. I ended up misplacing the invoice for a month, so they didn't get paid. This caused our company to lose this contract and pretty much go out of business. I was really young and looking back on it there were so many things that I should have done differently but just didn't realize. Plus it was, in my opinion, way too much work for one person, which I had said a few times before. Either way I felt really bad, still do. I ended up quitting a little while later. The owner didn't tell anyone why we lost the contract, but me and him both knew. Electronics repair guy. I turned off all paging at a regional hospital for Christmas week, so no way to page doctors, make announcements. After that they only let me in the BLDG accompanied by a security guard. When I was younger I worked for a contractor. I tore down the wrong wall. I was working at a shaving razor company. They had these large coils of metal that they ran through a machine. I had no idea what the duck I was doing and removed the cover on the coil. This large coil just starts spinning fast and unraveling everywhere. I tried to stop it with this cutting tool I was holding because I was supposed to take a sample of the metal. This scrapes a huge line down the side of the coil. I managed to stop it and wind it back up, then put the cover back on like nothing happened. I also one time sent 7,000 kgs of an urgent air freight shipment to Cologne, Germany, airport code CGN, instead of the Charles de Gaulle airport, airport code CDG, because I'm an idiot. But that was for a different job. That cost several $1,000s to fix. At the first advertising agency I worked at, one of our clients was an oil drilling company. I was working on some very standard ads for them, one of which had the headline, "Faster, farther, deeper." I made a typo that caused the ad to read, "Faster, farther, deeper." Thankfully my creative director caught it before it went to the client. We all had a big, nervous laugh about it and the original ended up on the creative department's wall. Not me, but a co-worker of mine some years ago. I was working for technical support for a bank and my co-workers and I were pretty laid back and would often joke and fool around. We had our own room, so we could pretty much do whatever we wanted and no one would know, of course. We still had to get work done. It was a pretty amazing job really. Anyway, at some point, a coworker says something like "holy it" and cracks up laughing. I ask him what he's laughing at and he tells me wait, I'll email it to you. A few minutes later, he asks me if I got it. I hadn't. See, the emails at that company, like at many other companies, were of the form first name, last name @company.com. So he typed my first name, then the first letter of my last name, then auto-completed and sent. Unfortunately, some high-up director in the company had the same first name as I did. His last name started with the same letter and he was higher in the alphabetical order. My co-worker had just sent a high-up director a very WTF porn video. He went into panic mode for a bit, but eventually, things turned out okay, albeit slightly awkward, when the director replied, "Haha, keep them coming." I work at a boutique, and my manager accidentally mislabeled 2 necklaces. Switching their prices wouldn't be a huge deal, but one of the necklaces was $200 and one was $1,400. I sold the one labeled $200 about a week later, not having any idea, and then got in trouble for it after my boss saw the $200 necklace marked as $1,400 lying around. How it was my fault, I'll never know, but according to her I should have known that the little rhinestone looking things on the necklace were real diamonds, and that I should have recognized it was worth more than $200. Yeah. I once broke over 1,000 glass cups at once. It created a pile of broken glass half as tall as I am. I was working in a glass factory, and we shipped them on skids, with the glasses stacked on top of one another, with a cardboard divider. So, I'm standing on a towering machine that raises the skid to my level. I slide the cardboard piece with around 100 glasses onto the skid, press a button that lowers the skid the height of the glasses, slide another piece of cardboard on top of those glasses, with another 100 glasses on them. When the skid hits the floor, there's someone there to wrap the skid in plastic and stuff to keep it all together. Well, it was my first day, and I'd been warned to make sure that when the kicker puts a skid out, that it doesn't also put another one half out in the landing zone for the skid you're working with. After 6 hours, I guess I got lazy. So, when I had a full skid and pressed a button to set it down on the ground to be wrapped, it hit another skid and tipped over. It was literally a tower of brand new glass cascading to the floor. Everyone stopped to laugh. The shift manager screamed at me, rolled a dumpster over to the pile of glass and handed me a shovel. He told me when I was done to see him. When I was done shoveling and sweeping up the mess into a dumpster, I told the shift manager, who pulled me into an office where a higher level manager chewed me out for half an hour. It was good that it was my first day, since that was probably the only reason they didn't just fire me on the spot. TLDR, working in a glass factory, tipped a whole skid of glasses over, destroying every one. Unix admin. RMRF. Should have been. RMRF Dart. Why is it taking so long to delete a handful of folders and file, comma, Fuck.